We're going to stay on the topic of science communication, but this time the target group isn't political leaders, but instead the public opinion. One thing that we're going to touch upon is also the dangers of misinformation. So for the next session, I'm delighted to introduce my colleague Diane Jean-Blanc, who is the EU Project Director here at Science Business. And Diane, well, I guess you're going to tell us or help us understand how can Horizon Europe increase public faith in science and scientists. So you have an ambitious theme in front of you. So I hand over to you. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Marilyn, and welcome to the session supported by the EU project TRUSCA. Our topic today is Brain Trust. How can Horizon Europe increase public faith in science and scientists? To answer this question, I'm pleased to welcome Giuseppe Pellegrini, who's the president of the Italian research center Observa, who is here with me today in studio. And Anna Panagopoulou, who is the director of European Research Area and Innovation, and Cici Asqual, who is the Secretary General of the Swedish NGO Vetenskap and Allmänhet. Welcome and thank you for being here today. Let's dive in. First, we will speak about the role of institutions in science communications and public engagement. Then we will explore the path of trust. And last, we will see what we can expect from Horizon Europe in terms of building trust between societal authorities and citizens. Giuseppe, could you share with us your point of view on the roles of institutions in science communication and public engagement?
Thank you, Diane. Well, the development of better public communication on the issues and the effects of research concerns the opening of an inadequate democratic space. In the various European countries, this can be developed in various ways, depending on the democratic tradition and recent histories of the history and the different countries. In some cases, there are institutional forms of participation in the discussion on issues of great public importance. In others, it is still in its beginning, even if the initiative promoted by the European Commission in recent years with various projects have made it possible to experiment forms of participation and dialogue among citizens, stakeholders, institutions, and scientists. Institutions and communicators could have a key role in balancing information, emotion, especially developing a constant and balanced regular communication. A strategy of direct relationship with the researchers allows to provide the public with adequate and correct information. But the risk is sometimes to intensify the communicative action only when we live an emergency, and this activates the phenomena of excess and also of misinformation, as we live during the pandemic time, generating the so-called infodemic.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Anna, I would like to give you the floor. Could you share your point of view, especially regarding fighting conspiracy theories such as climate change or, of course, the COVID-19 vaccines?
Yes. Hello. Good afternoon to everybody. And thank you for inviting me today to participate to this conference. So first of all, I would like to say that from the institutional point of view, there have been a lot of activities that have been taken in place, and both at political level and at programming level. And I would like to highlight, following to what Giuseppe said, that this is an initiative that we have to do in the context of the social responsibility, that it does not concern just what we can do as institutions at European level, but concerns also very much the role of the member states. So I'm very happy to inform and to remind all of us that in November 2026, in 26 November 2021, there was an important Council recommendation adopted by the European Council on the Pact for Research and Innovation in Europe, which has as a main principle social responsibility that includes engaging citizens in design and implementation of research and innovation policy. And this is essential in order to achieve greater impact, be responsive to society's needs, and indeed to increase trust and commitment in science and technology and innovation. It is also important that the pact lists active citizens and societal engagement in R&I as a priority area for joint action in the Union. So we need to ensure that relevance for research and innovation and to strengthen its quality and effectiveness. And also in this package, we have a new policy agenda that should be implemented with the Commission together with the member states, where there is one specific action which foreseen the scale-up of the Plastic Pirate Citizen Science Initiative into a European-wide campaign, very much linked to the missions of the oceans, as well as working together on public engagement practices, also in view of launching more such campaigns. So I think that with this new package in the European research area, the institutions, the Council, the Commission, the Member States, they will put in the political context very important emphasis on how to deal with science communication. But also in Horizon Europe program, the citizens' involvement is a program principle and an operational objective, which means, in other words, in all Horizon Europe programs, we need to take into account and on their design already, on their operations, how we involve citizens. So we believe that the program activities and the outcomes will also be an important means to fight misinformation and counter conspiracy theories, such as those against climate change or COVID-19 vaccines. So these are areas where they're undoubtable from the scientific point of view. Nevertheless, it causes it lacks of causal relations between, in some cases, in certain parts of society, which are questioning these areas also. I mean, we had the previous session where the vaccine issue was specifically identified. So what we need is that our researchers act with integrity and responsibility. We need openness towards societal involvement, and we need capabilities to communicate scientific evidence and findings to the public. We believe that this is the way that will help us to have more impact and more trust and less misinformation in the society.
Thank you, Anna. Cici, could you share your point of view, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for inviting me to this important event. So I work with the Swedish Nonprofit Association. We are promoting dialogue and openness between the public and researchers. Among the tasks, we are running annual surveys into public attitudes in Sweden. We've done so for 20 years now. So we can see that trust in research, trust in researchers, trust in research institutions, all those are high, according to our most recent barometer, the VA barometer, which was published in December 2021. And this is not only the case in Sweden, but in many other countries. There was recently a Welcome Global Monitor presented in late autumn last year. Would the pandemic be a reason for the increasing trust? Well, I think we can believe so. And in the barometer we made already in 2020, we asked about people's confidence in researchers, as we do every year, but we also asked about confidence in journalists. And we saw a definite increase in the trust for researchers, whereas there was actually a decrease for journalists. As Giuseppe stated, the World Health Organization has warned about this infodemic, which is coupled with the pandemic, a lot of true and false information being all around. But as we see this increase in trust during the pandemic, we thought we need to look a bit closer. So we also actually, my organization made a special survey during the first year of the pandemic on public attitudes towards those different professional groups when they comment about the coronavirus in the media. And we saw that healthcare professionals and researchers, there's a lot of confidence among ordinary people towards those professional groups, whereas there are very little confidence towards politicians, I'm afraid, and also towards journalists. When it comes to government officials, that's somewhere in between those groups. And also, again, there are similar results from similar surveys being made in other countries.
Thank you, Cici. How to avoid the questioning of fundamental science? On the backbone of what you just said, Cici, do you have any advice?
Well, we've seen researchers a lot in the media during the last 2 years. When we talk about trust, generally speaking, I think it's very important to be available, to be there, to be transparent, to communicate also uncertainty, what we know, what we might know, what we still don't know, but expect to know soon. So it's very much also about explaining not only about results, but also how research is actually being conducted. So we, again, my organization have explored different factors that affect trust in research. And we made some focus groups with citizens where we talked about what would improve and decrease trust for them. We found 4 main factors of that. One being the process, so that is how research is being conducted. Is it done in a way that you can trust the process? The second factor would be the product, the actual results. Are they useful to people or to society at large? Third being person, so the researcher, him or herself, is that a trustworthy person? And fourth, the presentation, so the way research is being communicated. So all those 4 factors are affecting if you feel trust, if you have confidence in the research. And now, during the pandemic, of course, it's been like a crash course for us all in how science works, about science reasoning, about source criticism, debunking myths. We see that there's been a lot of good initiatives, how helping people out to evaluate sources, to learn about vaccines, for instance, why you can trust the vaccines and get your shots. We ourselves made a website called pratavaccin.se, which is translated to talk about vaccines. So it's available also in English and the large minority languages being spoken in Swedish. So there's a lot of good initiatives, but to try to put it just in one sentence, it's about openness, dialogue, and being available, being there.
Thank you, Cici. Giuseppe, what could you tell us about Path of Trust?
I think that a large part of the public tries to inform themselves by evaluating the sources of information, and in general, from European surveys and also those carried out in my country, it is noted that citizens prefer usually institutional communication. During the TREXTA project, we have carried out workshops with citizens, evaluating some forms of online communication, and we have recorded the fact that too extreme communication, forced tones, and certain exaggeration are not tolerated. So in other words, it can be said that citizens prefer measured information proposed by authoritative experts. There is also the awareness of not always being able to deal with the complexity of certain scientific news, and there is a need to follow credible mediators, such as journalists and science communicators. Of course, there are forms of misinformation, proposal for conspiracy theories, or completely irrational fake news. But this type of trend is marginal and is addressed with constant communication and with the presentation of balanced and positive narratives. So the public does not like to be treated as ignorant or incompetent, and therefore it is necessary to have a great balance in dealing with the phenomenon of post-truth and fake news, bearing in mind that the public has a strong trust in scientists and in scientific institutions when dealing with topics related to research. During the workshop of the Tresca project, the relevant role of emotions in public communication emerged. This means that the narratives proposed in the various media must be carefully prepared. It has been noted, for example, that the stories proposed by scientists themselves have greater credibility.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Anna, when we talk about path of trust, what comes to my mind is transparency, integrity, accountability. Anything you would like to add?
Well, I have to say that I'm very much in agreement with what Cici said and Giuseppe said. I would like to say in few words, if I may, that first of all, what we have seen with the pandemic, it was said that a lot of fantastic work was done. We had innovative solutions. A lot of money have been invested in order to address the challenge. But there were still people that they were not believed to the results. And actually, if we don't build up the societal trust to research results, we are not going to have the impact that we expect. So Cici raised a lot of those issues that I believe that are the key elements for establishing the citizens' trust in science and in scientists. Open research is the process. The research must be conducted in an openly, responsible, and transparent way. This is fundamental in order to attract the trust from the citizens. The second issue is about the researchers themselves. The researchers must maintain the highest integrity standards, adhering to principles of reliability, honesty, respect, and accountability. We know that this is very important. The third element is about how we should involve the society, and we should not involve the society at the very end. We need to involve the society in the agenda setting and in doing the research where this is relevant and adds to the quality and the impact. And the fourth element is that research should also seek to increase the scientific literacy in society. For instance, we have to bring scientists into public places like schools, where with increased interest and knowledge of society in science. And these four elements, they are coming also very strongly out of the recent Eurobarometer survey that we had, which suggests high levels of interest, expectations of, but also engagement in science and technology by citizens. Just to raise or to inform you about few statistics. So 22% of EU citizens are interested in the new scientific discoveries and technological discoveries, and 26% they think that the overall influence of science and technology society is positive. In particular, in the areas of vaccines, combating infectious diseases, solar energy, and it was more surprisingly, nanotechnology. At the same time, EU citizens have high expectations of how science and technology are governed and of the conduct of scientists. More than half of citizens believe that decisions about science and technology should be based primarily on moral and ethical issues. And 68% they say that the scientists should intervene in political debates to ensure that decisions take into account scientific evidence. And 51% they say that scientists do not spend sufficient time meeting people to explain the work. So something that concerns when it comes to trust in science. Knowledge of scientific facts varies markedly by social background and country, pointing to the need to make continued efforts to promote lifelong scientific education and to make it easier for citizens to engage in scientific events and activities wherever they live and whatever is their background. So this is extremely important.
Thank you very much, Anna. Let me remind the audience that you can ask questions in the Q&A box on the right of your screen. Anna, just on the backbone of what you just said about open science, do you have an example, for example, of an open bank where researchers could put their data?
Of course, one of the biggest projects that we have now in the European Commission is the establishment of the European Open Science Cloud, which is going to be the big federated infrastructures where scientists, they could put the data. And if I would like to illustrate a specific example that we have put in place very quickly to address the pandemic situation, it is a European COVID-19 platform, which is operated by EMBL, which help us to collect a lot of research data, clinical trials that could be used in order to test, analyze the variants, and also to advance the research activities in the context of COVID-19. So we have as a main policy open science. We are going to establish the big European Open Science Cloud, and the COVID-19 platform, it is a particular case, a pilot on how such a data space could be established based on the principles of open science. And last but not least, we have also the OREC platform, where all the scientists, they can publish their journals in an open access, based on open access principle.
Thank you, Anna. It's very, very interesting. And actually, it's a perfect segue for our next item. What can we expect from Horizon Europe in terms of building trust between societal authorities and citizens? So actually, Anna, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for this question. And actually, it's good because I believe that we have been somehow accused that after the big importance that we have given under Horizon 2020 in the context of providing support to many projects, including the one of Tresca project, in the area of citizen science, we don't do a lot in the context of Horizon Europe, which is not true. Actually, in Horizon Europe, we have taken a kind of different approach. So under Horizon Europe, we are building on capacities and networks to promote societal engagement in research. And we are mainstreaming and integrating the science with and for society, the SWAF's activities across the clusters and across the missions. So that means that overall, what we try to do with the Horizon Europe is to have an interactions in all Horizon Europe projects from across academia, industry, public authority, citizens, and civil society. And the more the research results will be reliable, trusted, and taken up by society. So these activities is a kind of a cross-cutting priority and should be taken into consideration while we presenting and preparing the work programs, but also while we are implementing the projects. The Horizon Europe also supported activities will increase the transparency of research. They will help build more robust and trustworthy results and increase uptake of innovative solutions. And at the same time, it will raise citizen scientific literacy. So we see it as a big priority that we are going to monitor. And we are going in particular to monitor what will be the impact of Horizon Europe in this context. And last but not least, I would like to highlight that before summer 22, we are going to launch 3 new projects that are selected under 2021 topic on societal trust in science, research, and innovation. And also that although initially we have foreseen to dedicate 2 million euros in this context, at the end, we are going to dedicate 6 million to reflect the increasing importance of the topic, as well as the interest we saw from the proposals. We will also support further action on science communication to consolidate good practices, develop guidelines and tools, pilot training, and establish a European pool of expertise and support. And we believe that this will be very essential in order to better convey scientific knowledge and advise on critical issues, to address misinformation, build capacities and strengthen networks, and to ensure greater ability to react rapidly and effectively to critical situations. So overall, there is a different approach under Horizon Europe, but more direct approach in the context of delivering the research, implementing the research, in the process as well. Everything is going to be according to the principles of open science. And we do believe with this new approach under Horizon Europe, in particular also on missions of Horizon Europe, we will be able to have much higher impact than the one of Horizon 2020.
Thank you very much, Anna. Cici, what are you expecting from Horizon Europe?
Well, I'm expecting a lot. I was one of those, or my organization was one of those that was kind of disappointed when we learned that the SWOFS, the Science Within for Society work program, wouldn't be extended into Horizon Europe. But then we are very happy to learn about the widening participation and strengthening the European research area is coming instead as a work program. But I do agree with Anna that when I looking closer into Horizon Europe, it's really throughout that big program focus on different aspects of engaging, involving citizens and different stakeholders. So in the previous framework program, there was a lot about RRI, responsible research and innovation. And now it's a lot about open science. And actually RRI is one important aspect of the open science umbrella. And I believe that this focus on open science will help building trust through Horizon Europe. So again, it's the importance of openness, transparency, dialogue. So I would expect that Horizon Europe will allow for that we can continue trying out new formats like we did in the SWOFS work program. We can continue developing tools for open science, for different kind of interactions, participatory processes, dialogues, and that will hopefully lead to both building trust within each funded project through that project, but also to make those generic tools to help building trust that are available to every European. Because what's being developed within Horizon Europe, that's of course open access and open science as well.
And as we understood, that's something that is very important for the future of science communication. Giuseppe, I will give you 3 minutes and then we'll take questions from the public. So what are you expecting from Horizon Europe?
Well, I think that Horizon Europe can boost particular attention to the activities of communication and dissemination of research results by engaging researchers from all disciplines. This is a big challenge. In this perspective, the program seeks to encourage the development of communication channels, context of discussion and dialogue between different stakeholders to tell the impact of study and research activities. So the more these initiatives are developed, the more a greater awareness of the role of research will be fostered and the distance between the world of research and civil society will be reduced. Observing the effectiveness of many initiatives of content and dialogue between the world of research and civil society, for example, the European Researchers' Night, it is noted that the public wants to know the research activities and the results achieved. So it is therefore a question of encouraging this occasion by improving the forms and the quality of communication, the practices of listening and exchange between experts and the public.
Thank you, Giuseppe. The first question from the public is as follows. A scientist isn't per definition a good communicator. Should we give more attention to the field of science communication and science communicators as a distinct professional group? Giuseppe, do you want to answer that question?
Okay. In my mind, a scientist is not per se a good communicator. It can be. What is important is that you have to consider that communication has a key role in our era. And so, in this way, it's possible that he begin to be a good communicator or to work with other communicators, such as journalists and communicators. But the main thing is that it's not possible to think about research without involving in science communication and public engagement.
That's true. Anna, what are your take on this?
Well, I think that goes very much also to the discussions that we have currently in the European Commission together with member states and stakeholders on how we evaluate and assess the research and the researchers. Because this is, I believe, one of the main skills that the researchers have to develop, probably all of them, They are not very good in communicating, but however, it is one of the skills that they do have to develop in order to be able to communicate about the potential impact of their results and to attract the interest of the citizens. So also, I believe it's very important that they communicate about the plans that they have about research, and they engage the citizens in that. So it is very important that they develop these skills. I'm not saying it's easy for everybody, but probably so far there was not paid a lot of attention to that as well. So I believe there is a potential for further development and certainly a skill that needs to be developed by the researchers.
Thank you. I'm a bit conscious about time, so Cici, the next question is for you. Do we want the public to have faith? Rather, don't we want a public realm where informed debate can take place? Do we need a faithful public or an open but skeptical public?
The latter, if you want me to answer very, very short. Of course, I mean, we need a certain amount of trust, because if people don't trust the expert, don't have confidence in research, we do have a problem. But of course, it's important to be critical and to not only buy whatever the experts say. So it's, again, a question of being source criticist, being a source criticist, and to know a little bit more about scientific reasoning. So it's about scientific literacy, if science capital, if you like. Just adding that with the previous question about it's important to know how to communicate as a researcher. I think incentives is really key here, and that also means that Horizon Europe, in a way, is a forerunner, because also funding bodies must require communication expertise and communication efforts.
Thank you. Giuseppe, what kind of public are you expecting?
Of course, a critical public and much more responsibility for researchers. In the case of pandemic, we saw a lot of information, and probably, do you know this phenomenon called the virus star, as a lot of scientists in the public sphere that communicate a lot of information, something very different information. And this was a problem about disorientation for the public. And I believe the public needs clear communication coming from institutions, coming from researchers, and probably a new alliance among research institutions, and also with journalists and public communicators, because sometimes there is a big pressure coming from the media system in order to have fresh data, have fresh news, and this sometimes quite a little bit create a sort of confusion in the public. This is understandable. This is my general view.
Anna, do you have any input that you would like to share with us?
Well, of course, we want the critical public, because otherwise we cannot have a substance discussion with the public that is not critical. I don't think that's an issue. And as I said in my interventions before, we need to promote the continuous efforts for lifelong scientific education, and to make it easier for the citizens to engage in the scientific events, activities, and debates. And we also want a critical public, because we also want them to be critical to misinformation as well. And I think this is also very important for people. They have to be critical about whatever they heard in the social media. And then I believe also that from our more responsive researchers, that they're better able and better capable to communicate, they will be able to engage in very good discussions with critical audience. So we need both sides at the end, and we need to make our efforts to engage citizens even more to scientific dialogues.
Thank you, Anna. That's a great segue to the next question. Should the focus of trust be on scientists or institutions? I can see the value of scientists as spokespeople, but not all are, or should be expected to be, good science communicators. What role do you see for communication professionals in building trust? Anyone would like to take that question first?
So what both institutions, of course, and the persons within those institutions are important. So you need both. And if you look into surveys of different kinds, usually you have a higher trust or more confidence into the experts, the people, rather than the institutions where they're working. But it's really an interaction between the two of them, both institutions and experts, people working to make an impact.
Thank you, Cici.
No, just a few words. I would like to say that probably it's important for communicators to find a new way to talk about science, trying to take into account how researchers are working, how it's possible not to be so under pressure regarding the emergency. Probably it's important to build up step by step daily a scientific communication in order not to be only under pressure when there is an emergency such as the pandemic.
So just to add from my side, indeed, both institutions and individual researchers, but of course the institutions, they have to play also a role to develop the framework conditions, the incentives, to create the possibilities to skill their researchers in order to be able to communicate. So it is a common effort. That's why I'm very happy that in the context of the PACTA and the policy agenda, it has been highlighted by the member states, by the Commission together, but also by the stakeholders that they have been engaged in this discussion, how important is the science communication. At the end, it's very much linked also to the transformation and the way the institutions there operate, whether they operate in an open way, whether they are operating based on integrity and responsible approach towards the science and the society. So it is, for me, a package. We need to have the institutions that they establish the environment, and we need to have the researchers that they are implement research according to these principles and values.
Thank you. And very briefly, each of you, how would you encourage your peers or European researchers to put in practice more open science practices? And Giuseppe, how would you encourage?
I think one effort could be on training, as also Anna said before, during the training of a master student, of a PhD student. In all disciplines, it's important to give them the opportunity to have some skills in public communication, in public engagement. This is one important thing. And also, I think that institutions have to encourage research with some incentives to communicate, because by now, as you know, usually for a career of a scientist, it's very relevant to publish or to do research, but at the same time, it's important to have incentive also for their career to have incentives in public communication and public engagement.
Thank you. Anna, how would you encourage European researchers to put in practice more open science?
From the European Commission side, in order to promote open science, we have, first of all, some contractual obligations that we have put in the context of Horizon Europe program. So according to Horizon Europe program, results of Horizon Europe have to be publicly open, and they have to be data management plan that will enable them to share data and according to the FAIR principle. So we, as funders, in the framework conditions for receiving the grant and implementing the grant, we have put these as obligations, which means it is the incentive and at the same time the obligation. But also in the context of the policy that we have developed recently under the New Era policy agenda, but in the individual activities that we do with stakeholders on open science or research assessment, we promote open science as an evaluation aspect that it is very important for the reform of the research assessment. We have promoted evaluation, the open science as an important element of excellence in research and innovation, whether it is in our program or whether it goes beyond the program. And we think that this is the way that we can make a political momentum and engage member states, but also stakeholders to promote this open science practices. So what we want to do is to continue with this engagement with the stakeholders. They are the stakeholders that they are doing, the university, the research organization, that they are implement research, they are doing the research. And these are the ones that they have to be convinced that through open science practices, we are going to have better impact, better results that makes a difference for the society.
Thank you, Anna. Cici, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds to share your input on that question.
That's way too much. I would say, in summary, money talks, which is what Anna just said. But if you, as a funding body, you require open science, you will get open science. And the institutions will help the individual researchers with the frameworks, with the training, what's needed, so that we can gain this open science practices. So money talks.
Thank you, Cici. Well, we have one more question. I don't know, we have one minute and a half left, but can we use the metaphor of the ivory tower to understand the difficulty of science communication? Does the scientist tend to place himself or herself in a socially distant position vis-à-vis the citizen looking at society and someone who looks at a reality that is exterior to him or her?
No, but very briefly, I can say that what is important is not to leave scientists alone. It's a matter of a play in a team, also with communicators in scientific institutions, the European Commission. And so probably this is the best way, do not to leave the scientist or the communicator in the ivory tower.
Anna, Cici, any words left?
Not really. I think we really had a very interesting discussion, and thank you very much to you also for chairing this meeting, moderating this panel, but also to the audience for very interesting questions.
My pleasure. I think we can wrap up this panel. The open science, integrity, accountability are definitely the keywords. Make sure that you question the sources of what you see online. You can look at what Tresca does. It's an extremely interesting EU project that is coming to a close. I would like to thank all of our panelists here, and you, Giuseppe, who came all the way to Brussels. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Cici. Thank you, Science Business, for this very interesting panel. Marilyn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you to your panelists for a fascinating set of discussions.